Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read so far in 2022. I am so excited to finally bring you guys some book content. I know I feel like I've been saying in my past couple of videos, book content is coming. I know I teased it on my community tab before, but I am finally sitting down and filming this video, and I am just so excited about it. In the beginning of the year, when I really started to get into reading, I set myself a goal to read 20 books in the year, and I am already halfway through. This video will not contain any spoilers. If you guys have not read these books, do not worry. I'm not going to say anything that really happens within the book. Only if it's already on like the back cover and the synopsis, I will be reading that to you guys and giving you just like a general rundown. And then I will also be giving you my final thoughts and a rating without getting too detailed. So no spoilers here. We are just going to be having a chat about books. My Goodreads will be down below if you guys want to go ahead and be friends on there and add me. You totally can. I try to update it as often as I can with my progress on books and just my different shelves and stuff like that. And if you have any other book recommendations that you guys think I have to read, definitely leave them in a comment down below for me. And I'm just excited to keep reading and expand my TBR or to be read list. So I hope you guys enjoy seeing this video, and let's go ahead and jump on into it. The first book of the year that I read is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was so popular all over, pretty much everywhere, all over Book Talk especially. That's where I get a lot of my book recommendations and do a lot of research on books. But this is more of a historical romance. I would say it's not my favorite genre, but this was kind of like a benchmark for me. This was the first book that I read this year, and then after this I kind of realized that I do prefer more contemporary romance novels. If you like that old Hollywood glamour type of feel, I think you will really enjoy this book as well. This book is a dual point of view, and it is also 2 time periods. So I will quickly read you guys the back of this book so you kind of know the rundown. So it says, reclusive Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant to write her story, no one is more astounded than Monique herself. Determined to use this opportunity to jumpstart her career, Monique listens in fascination. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s to leaving show business in the 80s, and of course the 7 husbands along the way, Evelyn unspools a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great forbidden love. But as Evelyn's story nears its conclusion, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monique's own in tragic and irreversible ways. I loved the storylines. I love the flashback. I'm a huge fan of books that jump back and forth between the present tense and the past tense just until the story comes together at the end. It has a good twist at the end as well, where things kind of come together and things make sense. I think something that Taylor Jenkins Reid does really well in this book is in that past and present tense, the language is so different. Like how people talked in the 50s, 60s, and even the 70s is so different than how we speak and the words that we say now in the present. And she did so good at really just like putting you back in the 50s and 60s. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. So much just like good character development in this book, and I really loved it. I found all the characters extremely fascinating. So after I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I jumped right back to a Colleen Hoover book. I picked up November 9th. Colleen Hoover is definitely my favorite author. I feel like that probably will not come as any surprise to you guys, knowing that I love fiction romance books. I love her style of writing. I love that she writes in first person. I think November 9th so far is my favorite book that I have read ever. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. This book was absolutely incredible. I'm actually getting goosebumps just thinking about this book. It was so good. So let me just read the back to you while I gather my thoughts here. So it says, Fallon meets Ben, an aspiring novelist, the day before her scheduled cross-country move. Their untimely attraction leads them to spend Fallon's last day in LA together, and her eventful life becomes the creative inspiration Ben has always sought for his novel. Over time, and amidst the various relationships and tribulations of their own separate lives, they continue to meet on the same date every year, until one day Fallon becomes unsure if Ben has been telling her the truth or fabricating a perfect reality for the sake of the ultimate plot twist. Can Ben's relationship with Fallon, and simultaneously his novel, be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak? You guys, this I am so speechless even now. I seriously have chills all over my leg. This book just took me on an absolute roller coaster of emotions. It made me laugh, smile, angry, sad, cry. It was just a whole emotional mess for me in the best way possible. You know how they say like people have like their top like book boyfriends? Benton James Kessler, definitely at the top. Absolutely loved his character. Just overall loved everything about this book. Just strap in. That's all I'm gonna say. Strap in and just get ready if you are reading that book, because all the feels. I don't even know what else to say. Just so good. Right after, I moved on to Verity. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, another 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely devoured this book. If you guys like more thriller, a romance thriller, go snatch this and read it right now. This was actually really kind of spooky, you guys. It was a thriller. It's not like horror or anything like that. It's not like super scary, but definitely had a really strong thrill to it, where sometimes if I was reading it at night, I'd be like, oh, okay, I might have to put this down, because it was spooking me out at some points. This book actually made me like scream and throw the book off my bed when I finished it, because there's just so much to talk about this book. If you have read Verity, you will know, but there's just so much to think about. It actually took me like a week to process this book when I was finished with it. So let me just read you guys the back so you actually know what this is about. Lowen Ashley is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin when she accepts the job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford, husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford, has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in a successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. Lowen arrives at the Crawford home, ready to sort through years of Verity's notes and outlines, hoping to find enough material to get her started. What Lowen doesn't expect to uncover in the chaotic office is an unfinished autobiography Verity never intended for anyone to read. Page after page of bone-chilling admissions, including Verity's recollection of the night her family was forever altered. Lowen decides to keep the manuscript hidden from Jeremy, knowing its contents could devastate the already grieving father. But as Lowen's feelings for Jeremy begin to intensify, she recognizes all the ways she could benefit if he were to read his wife's words. After all, no matter how devoted Jeremy is to his injured wife, a truth this horrifying could make it impossible for him to continue loving her. There was so much good suspense in this book. Definitely a little bit on the dark side at some points, so spicy at some points as well. If you guys are into spiciness, I need Colleen Hoover to write something else like this ASAP. I actually saw on her Instagram story recently, she answered some questions and she is working on something similar. I think she said for late 2023. Sometimes when I read these books, I'm like, how do these authors ever even come up with something this unique and just this good? The next 2 books that I read are the Bellinger Sisters series by Tessa Bailey. I read first It Happened One Summer, and then after I read Hook, Line, and Sinker. These books were really adorable, you guys. This was my first experience with Tessa Bailey, and it took me a little bit to get into this book. I was about 5 chapters in, maybe 6 chapters in, before I really got into this, and that is because it is written in third person, which is just so different for me. I think when you read, like, you just get used to that point of view. I was so used to the first person point of view from Colleen Hoover and Taylor Jenkins Reid that when I switched over to this Tessa Bailey book, it was like, whoa. I felt like I almost didn't know how to read. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I would say for me in real life, it leans closer to like a 4.5 out of 5. It was funny. It actually made me laugh a couple times out loud. It was so spicy. I feel like I had not experienced like true book spice until I started reading Tessa Bailey, and she is definitely like the spiciest of the spicy that I have read. But funny, like I said, it made me laugh. Great story, great character development in here. So this says, Piper Bellinger is fashionable and influential, and her reputation as a wild child means the paparazzi are constantly on her heels. When too much champagne and an out-of-control rooftop party land Piper in the slammer, her stepfather decides enough is enough. So he cuts her off and sends her and her sister to learn some responsibility, running their late father's dive bar in Westport, Washington. Piper hasn't even been in Westport 5 minutes when she meets big, bearded sea captain Brendan Taggart, Taggart, who thinks she won't last a week outside of Beverly Hills. So what if Piper can't do math and the idea of sleeping in a shabby apartment with bunk bed gives her hives? How bad could it really be? She's determined to show her stepfather and the hot grumpy local that she's more than just a pretty face. Except it's a small town, and everywhere she turns she bumps into Brendan. The fun-loving socialite and the gruff fisherman are polar opposites, but there's an undeniable attraction simmering between them. Piper doesn't want any distractions, especially feelings for a man who sails off into the sunset for weeks at a time. Yet as she reconnects with her past and begins to feel at home in Westport, Piper starts to wonder if the cold, glamorous life she knew is what she truly wants. LA is calling her name, but Brendan and this town full of memories may have already caught her heart. Really great story. I really like how Tessa Bailey writes. Like I said, once you get used to that like third person point of view, it just flows. I love, she uses a lot of like internal dialogue and just truly makes you laugh out loud. Such great light read. Again, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Perfect for the summertime, like beach read or pool read. Definitely recommend picking this one up. After It Happened One Summer, I read the second book in the Bellinger Sisters series, Hook, Line, and Sinker. So this book is about Piper Bellinger and Brendan, and then this book, Hook, Line, and Sinker, is about Hannah Bellinger, who is Piper's sister and kind of her love interest in her love story. So this to me was a solid 5 out of 5 stars. I like this a little bit more than It Happened One Summer. In this book, she's more of like Gossip Girl socialite kind of vibes. I guess you could say it's what you get from Piper. Not really a super relatable character, whereas I feel like Hannah is definitely a little bit more down to earth, and I just absolutely loved her story. Overall, just more relatable to her as a person, I guess you could say. So I think that's why I enjoyed this story a little bit more. King crab fisherman Fox Thornton has a reputation as a sexy, carefree flirt. Everyone knows he's a guaranteed good time, in bed and out, and that's exactly how he prefers it. Until he meets Hannah Bellinger. She's immune to his charm and good looks, but he seems to enjoy his personality and wants to be friends. Bizarre. But he likes her too much to risk a fling, so platonic pals it is. Hannah's in town for work, crashing in Fox's spare bedroom. She knows he's a notorious ladies' man, but they're definitely just friends. In fact, she's nursing a hopeless crush on a colleague, and Fox is just the person to help her lackluster love life. Armed with a few tips from Westport's resident Casanova, Hannah sets out to catch her coworker's eye. Yet the more time she spends with Fox, the more she wants him instead. And Fox is fantasizing about waking up next to her for the rest of his life, and man overboard. He's fallen for her. Hook, line, and sinker. Helping her flirt with another guy is pure torture, but maybe if Fox can tackle his inner demons and show Hannah he's all in, she'll choose him instead. Another goosebumps. Those are just all so good. I think my favorite thing about this was the epilogue. If you guys finished this book, it was a really, really great epilogue. I feel like it was like everything that I needed to know. And again, very, very spicy. Tessa Bailey knows how to deliver the spiciness in this book for sure. And I think these two are probably the spiciest that I've ever read. The next book that I read after the Bellinger Sisters series was my first Mia Sheridan book. This was Archer's Voice. I heard so many things about this book on Book Talk. I knew I had to grab it. This was an insanely emotional read. I would say definitely look up trigger warnings on this book. In a lot of cases, I actually had to close the book and put it down for a little time because it was kind of overwhelming at some points. It was definitely very, very overwhelming. So I just wanted to start with that. Definitely read up on this book, look into it because it is a lot to handle, honestly, but it was also absolutely incredible as well. It was such a beautifully written story, such a unique story too. I'm kind of at a loss for words just thinking about it. So let me just read you guys the back. It says, I wanted to lose myself in the small town of Pelion, Maine, to forget everything I had left behind. For 6 months, each breath has been a reminder that I survived and my dad didn't. I'm almost safe again. But the moment I meet Archer Hale, my entire world tilts on its axis and never rights itself again. Until I trespass into his strange, silent, and isolated world, Archer communicates with no one. Yet in his whiskey-colored eyes, days, something intangible happens between us. But this town is mired in secrets and betrayals, and Archer is the explosive center of it all. So much passion and so much hurt, but it is in Archer's silence that we might just find what we need to heal and to live. I did give this a 5 out of 5 stars. This makes me want to read more Mia Sheridan. This is definitely a book that I completely wish that I could read from the beginning all over again for the first time. It was just incredible. I wanted to read something more like fun and like peppy for my next book, so I grabbed A Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And you guys, I was kind of disappointed in this book. I know a lot of people love this book, so do not hate me if you do love this book. And it was overall a good read. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but to me, I just wasn't really grasping the hype around this book. It definitely took me a while to get through this book. I kept putting it down. There was just something about it that wasn't holding my attention, and I honestly felt a huge lack of chemistry between the two main characters. It was cute, but it wasn't the best thing I've ever read, I guess you could say at the end of the day. So it says, what happens when America's first son falls in love with the Prince of Wales? When his mother became president of the United States, Alex Claremont Diaz was promptly cast as the American equivalent of a young royal. Handsome, charismatic, genius, his image is a pure millennial marketing gold for the White House. There's only one problem. Alex has beef with an actual Prince Henry across the pond. And when the tabloids get a hold of a photo involving an Alex-Henry altercation, U.S.-British relations take a turn for the worse. Heads of family and state and other handlers devise a plan for damage control, stage a truce between the two rivals. Soon, Alex finds himself hurtling into a secret romance with a surprisingly unstuffy Henry that could derail the presidential campaign and upend two nations. I'm all about an enemies to lover kind of trope, but this one just 100% didn't do it for me, but maybe it would be different for you. So definitely look into this and see if you would want to read it, or if you have read this book, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Next up, I went ahead and read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I did think this was a good book, but I feel like I had just like really high hopes for this, and I wanted to love it more. I feel like in comparison to November 9th and Verity, this book didn't have like that big like shock factor or like uniqueness to it, I guess I want to say. It was a really great read, like I said, 4 out of 5 stars, but I think I set the bar a little too high for this one in my personal mind, and I wanted to just overall love this a little bit more than I did, but it still was really great. I feel like I'm rambling. I did really enjoy the male main character in this story. He was definitely my favorite. I liked him much more than the female main character in this story, but there was something about Kenna, who's the female main character, that I just was not really vibing with, or really just like agreeing with the things that she was doing. So it says, after serving 5 years in prison for a tragic mistake, Kenna Rowan returns to the town where it all went wrong, hoping to reunite with her 4-year-old daughter. But the bridges Kenna burned are proving impossible to rebuild. Everyone in her daughter's life is determined to shut Kenna out, no matter how hard she works to prove herself. The only person who hasn't closed the door on her completely is Ledger Ward, a local bar owner and one of the few remaining links to Kenna's daughter. But if anyone were to discover how Ledger is slowly becoming an important part of Kenna's life, both would risk losing the trust of everyone important to them. The two form a connection despite the pressure surrounding them, and as their romance grows, so does the risk. Kenna must find a way to absolve the mistakes of her past in order to build a future out of hope and healing. I feel like for being like coined a romance novel, it was kind of lacking some romance for me, but I feel like everyone has their own preferences and tastes. So I'm really curious to see how you guys felt about this book. I recently just finished the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Loved this book. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This was a hilarious, funny, just like light, breezy rom-com. Enemies to lover kind of trope, but this was so just funny. This was one of the few books that I read this year that actually made me laugh out loud. I think the only other books that did that were the Bellinger Sisters series by Tessa Bailey, but this is my first Christina Lauren book, and I love it. I cannot wait to read more by Christina Lauren. I really connected with Olive in here, who's the main character character because she is a twin. I'm also a twin as well, so it was just like a fun connection. I felt like I could really just understand her relationship with her twin there. So this says, Olive Torres is used to being the unlucky twin. From inexplicable mishaps to a recent layoff, her life seems to be almost comically jinxed. By contrast, her sister Amy is an eternal champion. She even managed to finance her entire wedding by winning a slew of contests. Unfortunately for Olive, the only thing worse than constant bad luck is having to spend the wedding day with the best man and her nemesis, Ethan Thomas. Olive braces herself for wedding hell, determined to put on a brave face, but when the entire wedding party gets food poisoning, the only people who aren't affected are Olive and Ethan. Suddenly, there's a free honeymoon up for grabs, and Olive will be damned if Ethan gets to enjoy her paradise solo. Agreeing to a temporary truce, the pair head for Maui. After all, 10 days of bliss are worth having to assume the role of loving newlyweds, right? But the weird thing is, Olive doesn't mind playing pretend. In fact, the more she pretends to be the luckiest woman alive, the more it feels like she might be. Truly such a good read. It was a little bit, I think it was the longest book I read this year. I think it was about 400 pages. Yep, it was just about 400 pages. So definitely the longest book that I read this year, but I flew through it. It was so good and hilarious, and I would really love to see like a movie off of this book. I think it was really great. Wrapping up this video with book number 10, I actually just finished this book last night, and that is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Carly Fortune is a brand new author. This is her debut novel, and I just finished this last night. So as far as like my final thoughts go, I think I want to sit on it for a few days. When I finished reading this, I was like, this was so good. It was a great summer read that I will tell you for sure. Just like the setting and the vibes of this book. I loved the storyline. It is first person, which you guys know by now I love. And I like that it again jumped back and forth between present tense, which takes place over one weekend, and then past tense takes place over 6 different summers. So I really like how the book was laid out. It was very clear, the different time periods. I instantly gave this 5 stars on my Goodreads when I wrapped it up, but I felt like I was still coming off of like the adrenaline of reading it and finishing the book. Now that I'm kind of like sitting on it for like 12-15 hours, I feel like it was closer to like a 4 to 4.5 to me. I do feel like the ending to me was a little bit rushed the more that I'm kind of thinking about it and reading other people's reviews and just thinking about how this could have played out a little bit differently at the end. I feel like the ending was a little bit rushed. So right now I'm kind of sitting this at like a 4 to 4.5, but I feel like I still need to take a couple days to process this. The back says 6 summers to fall in love, 1 moment to fall apart, and a weekend to get it right. They say you can never go home again, and for Persephone Fraser, ever since she made the biggest mistake of her life a decade ago, that has felt too true. Instead of spending glittering summers on the lakeshore of her childhood, she stays home in a stylish apartment in the city, keeping everyone a safe distance from her heart, until she receives a call that sends her racing back to Barry's Bay and into the orbit of Sam Florrick, the man she thought she'd never have to live without. When Percy returns to the lake for Sam's mother's funeral, their connection is as undeniable as it has always been. But until Percy can confront the decision she's made, they'll never know whether their love is bigger than the mistakes of their past. So like I said, I'm definitely still processing this, but the one thing I could say for sure is that I think it was a really fantastic debut novel. I really like how Carly Fortune writes. I think one thing that we could have had in this book was the male point of view. We only had Percy or Persephone's point of view in this book. I definitely think a little bit of Sam's point of view would have been nice as well to kind of balance things out. And I definitely would recommend it to you guys to read as well. I just wish we had a little bit more time with like the ending, as I mentioned. But I'm gonna sit with my thoughts on this one for a few more days, and maybe in a future video I will update you guys on this. All right, you guys, so that is going to complete this video. I know it was probably a long one, so I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. Those were the 10 books that I read so far in 2022. As I said, I am hoping to get to 20 this year, and I definitely think I could make it happen. So please leave me your book recommendations down below. All of the books that I mentioned today will be listed and linked via my Amazon storefront down below if I could find them on Amazon, which I'm pretty sure all of these I can, so I will definitely have them linked there for easy finding. I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this video and spending time with me today. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up so I know, and it really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel before you leave, believe. I would love to have you guys here as part of my little YouTube fam. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, click that notification bell down below and you'll get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I will see you in my next one. Bye guys!